Alrighty then, Successful Indie Author 5-Minute Focus Episode 1208, Technical Details in Your Story. I'm currently writing a medical thriller. I know very, very little about the medical terminology, medical processes. So I have a co-author who is a world-renowned surgeon, and he is spectacular. Now, understand that when you're writing technical details into a story, you have to explain it simply enough that you don't lose the core readership, but technically enough so those people who are in that industry can understand it and say, yes, that's exactly right. So it adds credibility to your text. Now, as Einstein said, if you can't explain it simply, then you don't understand it well enough. Well, how do you become an expert if you're not an expert? Well, that's the internet. You research, you become an expert enough that you get it. You can explain it. You explain it to make sense to yourself from what you see, and then you run it by experts. For my military sci-fi and my space warfare and all that stuff, I do have people that I ask questions of, hey, how does this sound? Is this correct? Is this math right? How do you calculate this? And good people, I get good answers and go forth and conquer. So you have to get those technical details right, but then you have to explain them simply, because you're talking to people just like you who didn't understand it until this morning when you started researching. And somebody reading your book is not going to dive in to do the research to see if you're right or wrong. And unfortunately, there are those people who are convinced you're wrong when you're right, and they'll be extremely vocal about how wrong you are. And you just have to accept that. That's the world of today. But if you get it right, then other people will argue on your behalf and say, no, this is exactly correct. Here's the calculation. Here's this. And then life is pretty good because you explained it simply, but with the right technical details. You've got that stuff correct. So medical thriller, the challenge I get is all of the references and input. It's all passive voice. So this happened, this happened, this happened. Very factual, no adjectives. So I have to turn that around and turn it into an active voice. The doctor inserted the trocar. Okay, there you go. Hey, move around after the gas. Okay, to expand the abdomen so you can see it better. Those kinds of elements of the medical, but active, passive to active, now make it narrative. And then the doctor looked at the nurse. Are you there? Not there yet. Okay. Lawyers waffle. Have you ever seen a lawyer give a very direct, firm answer? No. You look at your contracts. You've signed contracts in your life. What do they say? Will? No, they say shall. Why? I'm a lawyer and I don't freaking know. But that's what you use. Hey, you got to use shall because it's more indicative. It determines you have to do this. Will? That's how I read will. But I guess at some point in time, somebody read will and said, it doesn't really mean will. It means something different than will. So you have to say shall because that means something different than will, but in the right way that lawyers want. How in the hell do I know? So yes, translating lawyer speak into common everyday language is another challenge, as long as you're not writing contracts from it, shall, as opposed to will, and it's ridiculous. Engineers, they like step by step and checklists. So in one of my post-apoc books, I just simply put a listing. Here's what is in the go bag. Here's what I put at the end, like an appendix. So that's where you find out why the elves don't like the dwarves in the appendix. In the book, kind of. But you can put those details, and sometimes it is to put those details, good to put those details in the end of the book because it's like supplemental material. If somebody is that much into it, now they can read it. If not, hey, it's not clogging up the narrative with all of this techno babble that people aren't going to read. Don't put something in there that they're not going to read. So make it simple, make it flow, make it work for them. And if you really want to put the technical details, it's very specific, put it in the appendix, put it at the end and say, hey, here's exactly what that is. All right, cool. But write it simply. Write it so the readers aren't obstructed from continuing the story, because it still is all about the story. So that story flows, but don't take literary license with some of the details in order to make it work if that makes the details wrong. Explain it simply, get it right, but if it changes the story because the details aren't correct, well then you need to change your story, as opposed to assuming the readers are just going to gloss over that part because it's not going to work. So as you're plotting and coming up with your story, it has to work. You can't get to the end and say, "Oh my God, this doesn't work at all," because oh, hey, then you gotta change something or come up with some kind of inspired answer to fix that problem. But that's a problem you need to fix up front. You need to know those things and how they work. And my co-author on the medical thriller, perfect. He already realigned everything because we were off with our first surgery. But he's like, oh, in order for this to work later, let's do this. And we tweaked it. Very simple tweak, but now everything aligns perfectly. Good to go. So technical details, get them right, explain them simply for your average reader. If you want further technical details, put it in an appendix or put it in there, but explain it and make it flow. Have other interactions, maybe smells, maybe sounds that interrupt the action, but in a way that it keeps the readers reading while you're inserting those technical details that engage the brightest minds out there that are all in on whatever the technical issues are, whether it's medical, whether it's legal, whether it's engineering, whether it's physics. You don't know, but the reader's there. So appeal to both readerships, and that is where you win. That's why Andy Weir's The Martian and Project Hail Mary are so wildly successful, because they take the complex, make it easy, and still keep it complex. It's incredible. Peace, fellow humans.